Don't call it a comeback. I haven't been anywhere. I haven't gone anywhere. It's COVID. Can't travel. I've actually been filming videos, a bunch of videos. In the last few weeks, I have done over 30 videos, over 5 hours of content. It's ridiculous. I just haven't released them. The reason is that I figured out a way to make this work, where financially it makes sense for me to spend time making videos that help all of you. Because I saw you enjoyed the engine tuning video. For example, the one where I compared Kyosho to Mugen, C-Hub to Pillow Ball. People loved those videos. The feedback has been really positive. Also, people really enjoyed this, the Invisible Speed book. Now it's even been translated to French, Italian, Spanish, and German. It's crazy. So, 5 different languages for a book, selling worldwide, and my YouTube videos have been relatively successful, I think, with positive feedback. Now, how do I combine all of that? Well, an online course that starts at the very beginning of you discovering RC racing, ends at you fighting for world championship wins. It spans the whole career of someone in RC racing. I cover everything from you discovering the hobby, choosing a class, where to find information, where to buy stuff, what to buy, what to avoid, ways to make the most of your money, how to practice, how to prepare for your first race, attending your first race, your basic maintenance of your car. I also work with people in different racing classes because I'll cover 8-scale off-road, of course. But what about 10-scale touring car? That's a bit different. I'll work with someone on that. I'll work with someone else for nitro on-road, 10-scale electric off-road. So I work with people who are passionate about their favorite class, and the course will include information, specific information for all different classes. And of course, it will also include all the information in this book. So the Invisible Speed book is great. You can read all about this, look at pictures and diagrams, but I think there's still more value that can be given with video. You can watch cars going around a track and really can explain that in this section, this is what happens when you change this setup. And you can show slow motion of the car to really see what's happening and what the difference is between a high roll center and low roll center, for example. So you can learn to actually visually see these things at the track when you are adjusting your car. So there's more value to having a video setup guide than a book. It's going to be released in September. In August, I'll start promoting it. The pre-orders will begin and I'll show you some clips of the course. But September is when we aim to release it completely. This is obviously a massive project and it's taken and will still take a lot of time, but I think it will be worthwhile. This was the only way I could think of that spending time and energy and money on this, I can make something back. YouTube doesn't pay anything. I'm not making any money from these videos, but all of you guys are enjoying them. I needed to figure out a way to where it's worth my time doing this. And this was it, this online course. I'm sure that if you have enjoyed the videos I've made so far and you've enjoyed the book, you are absolutely going to love this course. Today we have a bit of a teaser, but not really, because the quality level of the videos in the course will be higher and the detail will be deeper and better. But I wanted to just cover one topic, the topic. Thanks a lot, Matt, for that intro timing. Anyway, I was saying that the topic for today is kingpin inclination. So I drove 2 cars, one with C-Hub style 0 inclination and one with pillow ball style inclined steering axis. And I'm going to compare them today. To start off, let's just look at the 2 different steering types to understand what the differences are. Okay, here on the left we have your typical C-Hub steering. Here's the C-Hub, there's the knuckle. This line here is the steering axis or kingpin axis. And this line is the center line of the tire and wheel. The reason we use the center line is that we assume that the tire is vertical, the contact patch here between the ground and the tire, the center of the contact patch will be the center of the tire. This is for simplicity's sake. In reality, the contact patch does move as the tire moves and camber changes, but we're not going to think about that right now. Let's keep it simple. So the center line of the tire is relevant here. And this steering axis is just a line drawn through the axis of the kingpins and extended to the ground. This red line represents the difference between the steering axis and the center of the tire. This difference is called the scrub radius. When the steering axis is to the inside of the center line of the tire, the scrub radius is said to be positive. All C-Hub cars basically have a positive scrub radius. The reason is that we need space here in the knuckle for bearings, and then the hex, and also the joint of the drive shaft needs to be in line with the steering axis so that it doesn't move forwards and backwards as the knuckle turns. So because of packaging issues, because we can't fit these parts in a small enough area, we end up with a positive scrub radius. If we look on the right here, we see a different scenario. You could actually imagine this as a pillow ball car. See, a lot of people think that a pillow ball car is very different to a C-Hub, and it's just not possible to make a C-Hub drive like a pillow ball, but it actually is. Because the thing is that the pillow ball has an inclined steering axis, so it has kingpin inclination. And you can do the same thing with a C-Hub, as you can see here. So it's still a C-Hub and a steering knuckle. It's just that the steering axis is inclined. And it's inclined so much, in fact, that you can see that the steering axis intersects the ground to the outside of the center line of the tire. And when the scrub radius is in the opposite direction to here on the left, it's called negative. So the steering axis is to the outside of the center line of the tire, and there is a scrub radius at ground level. This is the typical pillow ball geometry. It's just that in this case, it's not a pillow ball suspension. In fact, these pictures are from the new Mayako buggy. I wanted to make a car that incorporated both styles of front end in one. And this was the best way to do that, in my opinion. So we can have a zero inclined kingpin. So we can have the style of steering that the Kyosho, HB, JQRacing has. But we have reduced the length of the scrub radius, like Billy Easton has done on the Serpent. He has a very short knuckle, and I looked at that and I thought, you know what, that's a good idea. So the new Mayako also has a much shorter scrub radius. And why would you want to do that? Well, this red line is basically a moment arm. So anytime the wheel hits a bump, or you accelerate, or you brake, there are some forces that affect the wheel. And when you have a scrub radius, those forces try and turn the wheel. If we imagine that the steering axis and the center of the tire was at the same location and there was no scrub radius, anytime the wheel hit a bump, or you accelerated, or you hit the brakes, the wheel wouldn't try to turn because there's no moment arm. So it would just remain straight or at the angle that you've turned it to. As soon as you introduce a moment arm, a scrub radius, all those forces will try and twist and turn the wheel. So that is an unstable situation. So I'll explain. For example, with the C-Hub style, when you brake, the tires try to toe out, which is unstable. Imagine one side of the car hits higher grip as you are braking. The car will want to turn towards that side. Well, if the tires are also toeing out, that side that the car wants to turn to, the tire is toeing out, increasing the tendency to veer off to the higher grip side. In comparison, if you accelerate, what happens is the tire wants to toe in. So in a corner, the load transfers to the outside tire. As you get on power, that outside tire wants to turn more, so it increases steering. You may end up with some oversteer, especially if you hit a bump. So let's say you're accelerating and that corner is bumpy. In that situation, as you're accelerating and you hit a bump and the tire is towing in, it becomes an unstable situation where the car can either go into oversteer or even want to flip over. So the fact that the tire wants to turn more is not good in that situation. If we compare here to a negative scrub radius, like a pillow ball car setup, what happens is when you brake, the tires actually want to tow in. And that makes the car more stable under braking, because if we compare again to the situation where one side of the car hits higher grip, the car wants to turn that direction, but the tire is towing in. So it's fighting against that tendency of veering off into the higher grip. Also, when you accelerate, what happens is the tires want to tow out. That means that as you're turning in a corner, load transfers onto the outside tire, and that tire has more grip and is more dominant. As you get on power, it wants to tow out a bit, so reduce the chance of oversteer. So maybe even understeer a bit, which is more stable and easy. Especially if you're in a corner with bumps, what's going to happen is you get on power, your front outside tire hits a bump. Because it wants to tow out, it will try to climb over the bump instead of catching and going into oversteer or possibly flipping over. So this is a big reason why C-Hub cars tend to be more edgy and catch bumps in corners with the front end. And pillow ball cars are known for being quite stable and really good on power in long bumpy sweepers, for example, or high grip. The pillow ball car is known as being superior because it's just so smooth and the bumps don't seem to affect it as much. So the scrub radius is the reason for this. And I wanted to combine these two ideas into one car, and only having to change a minimal amount of parts. So you only need to change the C-Hub itself and the knuckle. That's it. And then you can have these two different setups. And that's what the new Mayako buggy has. Okay, so that was a brief overview of steering axis inclination or kingpin inclination and the difference between the two. Now what we'll do is we will go and watch a video of me doing a few laps. First, I'm going to drive an orange body car that has zero inclination, the C-Hub style setup, and then I'll drive a white body car that has the inclined steering axis, so the pillow ball setup. This is the Vasa track in Finland, the track for our first national, and it's quite loose. It's like medium loose to loose surface, as you can see. Really enjoyed this track. It has a lot of different kinds of corners. It's really key to carry corner speed, so it's fun to drive. It's a good challenge as a driver. And this chicane here is really difficult. It's easy to clip the pipe there. The jumps are also hard because the landings aren't steep at all, so you just have to jump really far and land relatively flat. So you have to control the car and land at the correct angle so it doesn't bounce. So here with this C-Hub style front end, the steering response is definitely higher than with the other version. It was actually easier to get through this chicane because as soon as I sort of entered the corner, after the initial steering, it felt like the steering was very neutral. And I knew where the car would go. I'd just get on power and precisely guide the car through the chicane. Also, this last corner before the loop that's coming up, this corner now after this jump, was easier to do. I'd turn in and then I was able to maintain speed through that section. So more responsive and precise, but still easy to drive. Then when we compare to this, so this was the inclined steering, and as you can see, I was having some trouble in the beginning because I was getting used to that change in steering feel. The thing about an inclined steering axis is that the steering doesn't feel quite as linear anymore. It's a lot smoother initially, which means that you don't have to be as careful with your initial steering input because the car doesn't really want to turn. So in that sense, it's easier to drive than the C-Hub style. C-Hub style was very responsive, so I was barely touching the wheel to start with and then adjusting from there. With this, I had to turn the wheel more initially to get the car to turn, but then as the car got into the corner, it turned more. And that's what you can see in some of these sections. So especially this last corner before the loop again here, I land the jump, do this corner. This was hard to, do you see how the rear was kind of even stepping out there a bit? I was searching. Let's go back. So watch here. I turn, okay, it did bounce a bit, but then oversteer, correct a bit, turn again. I'm having to correct because I am searching for the limit of grip and the feel of steering. The reason I'm searching is that there's one characteristic that the inclined steering axis has that the C-Hub style zero inclination doesn't have. And that is that due to caster, when we turn our wheels, they flop over. So if the wheels start vertical, as they turn, the inside wheel lays down into positive camber and the outside wheel lays down into negative camber. So you see you start straight and then when you turn the wheels lay over like this. When you have an inclined steering axis, what happens is that the inside tire will fall over more, but the outside tire will be more stood up. So if with the C-Hub style, both our tires just lay over, with the inclined, the pillow ball style, the inside tire lays over more, the outside tire lays over less. What this does is it makes it so that, yes, the initial steering is very smooth with the inclined steering, the pillow ball style steering. But then as you get in the corner, load transfers to the outside tire and the car rolls onto the outside tire. That outside tire, because it's more stood up, will have more grip. So it makes the steering non-linear, where initially it's smooth steering, then thanks to that more stood up outside tire, at some point in the corner you'll have more steering. So an inclined steering axis will be smooth off center, then have slightly more steering mid corner, and then as you get on throttle it will reduce steering again. So the steering won't be as linear. I would say that most of the time that inclined steering axis is still easier to drive. It gives this sense of it being easier to drive. But especially on loose tracks like this, you need to be aware of this, and as a driver you need to be in tune with that. So I actually would like to gather the steering input data from my radio and compare the two different front-end styles. Because I think what happens is that with the C-Hub style, I initially turn little and then control from there. With the pillow ball style, I turn more, but I reduce that steering at some point. So I think I turn more and then go back. I'd like to see that. That's something I just thought of now, because as I said, you turn in smooth, but then steering naturally increases. So you have to compensate for that. The C-Hub style, aggressive initially, and after that steering drops off a bit. Pillow ball style, smooth initially, and after that steering picks up a bit. Okay, so I got the hang of driving this now, and now I'm doing the chicane correctly. I'm able to carry my speed better. I actually did the same lap times, same 5-minute results with exactly same 5-minute results to the second multiple times with both styles. On low grip tracks like this, the difference is smaller. It's more of a preference thing. See, I'm still having issues with that corner there. Okay, here the slow motions will come up, but I wanted to show you the difference. So I drove for a while with C-Hub style, so I was used to it. And then these were my very first laps switching over to the inclined steering style. So I started off a bit slow, you know, picking up my pace as we go here. But I just wanted to show you that the difference makes it hard for me to know what the car is going to do. So I jump off track, I keep clipping pipes. Again, I'm on the pipe there. I didn't enter the chicane correctly. I clipped that pipe. So I keep hitting the track markings. And that's because I'm trying to adjust to what the car needs me to do. This is one reason why I don't like changing inclination or caster or even Ackerman really at races, unless I really have to. Because it changes the whole nature of the car and how it turns. I want to finish what I was explaining. So a really talented driver will do one lap, maybe two, and then they'll be in tune with the car. They will have adjusted their inputs to what the car needs. A less talented driver, but still a good driver, I'd say that I'm above average as a driver. Like I can go to the World Championships and finish top 30 or something, you know? Like, I think that's above average. So I'm good, but I'm not great. I'm not talented like Ronnefalk or Mayfield. Those drivers would pick up a car, do one or two laps, and be in tune. They would do the right movements, correct inputs, right amount of steering and throttle, and they get around the track. For someone like me, it takes longer. I don't adjust that quick. So I need more runtime with the car so I know exactly what to do. How much steering, how much throttle, then I can drive the car correctly around the track. Whenever anything changes, it takes time for me to adapt. That's why I can, for example, be faster in practice and closer to the top guys than I am at a race. Because in a race, the track develops differently. You hit the track and it's a bit different, traction level's different, your car's a bit off. You have to adjust and adapt as a driver. That's where I struggle. When I know exactly what to expect, because I've just been on the track and I know the traction level, I know my car, I know the feeling, I don't need to adapt, I sort of know it, then I can be faster. And then I can be at my best, I can reach my maximum performance level. Where these more talented drivers, I think they can reach it even when something is off, because they can adapt quicker. So my point is that on this track, in this condition, both front-end styles were equally good. It just took me some time to adapt to them. So these slow motions, for example, the point is I'm showing that the inclined steering had a different tendency of smooth in and then increase steering mid-corner, which would catch me out. But then when I adapted, I actually did that corner really great and smooth because I was able to do the correct inputs with my transmitter. So let's go back and watch that. So it was this corner that I had trouble with. Okay, so you see, I land and I keep losing the rear because mid-corner it always goes wrong. There's slightly more steering. Even there, more steering, and I had to correct. Okay, so I land, I turn, and then it surprises me because it turns more, so I have to correct. And I have slow speed going onto the straight. Here, I did go a bit wide, but the rear swings round a lot. And that's because I start turning, and as load transfers onto that outside front tire, remember that inclined steering axis, the tire is stood up more. So I'm turning here. This outside tire, because of the inclined front steering axis will be stood up more. So it may be even close to vertical in a corner like this, which means it has more grip. With no inclination, with a C-hub style steering, because of caster, this outside tire would be at negative camber, so less grip. So initially you have a lot of turn in with a C-hub style steering, but then after the initial turn in, it pushes a bit, slight reduction in steering. So it gives the car a very sort of linear and smooth feel. Here I'm running the inclined pillow ball style steering, so I turn in, it's quite numb. As load transfers, as the car rolls, this outside tire is more vertical, there's more grip, the car starts turning more. If you are offline like I am here, I'm onto the dust, and that will actually make the situation even more drastic where I spin out. And that's what happened. Then I had to correct and go onto the straight. When you do it correctly, it's smooth though. So here I turned, I got on power early. When you get on power, the front end wants to push a bit more, and then it was perfect. But it takes time to get to this point. You have to adjust your driving to the car. So what's the conclusion then? I think that the C-hub style, so zero inclination, it makes the initial steering a lot more aggressive and nervous. So it's very good for smaller, tighter tracks, like Neo Buggy Race, for example. Tight corners, indoor track, small. It's very good for a track like that. Loose track, like this one in the video, also very good, because there's nothing really that the front end can catch. The downside of it is that if the track gets difficult, if this track, for example, was really high grip, or it was really bumpy, the front end would start catching stuff. So it would make it harder to drive. But it can still be good. It's not a situation where you can't do well. Of course you can. But it's just not going to be as good as the inclined steering. So the inclined steering axis, the pillow ball style, is really good on high grip, high speed, bumpy tracks. For example, you remember the Euros in Sweden? Robert Batlle won. One reason why he won that race was that he had an advantage over Elliott Boots and David Ronnefalk because he had a pillow ball car. And that track was made for a pillow ball car. Super high speed, super bumpy, inconsistent grip. The front end just was gliding over everything, not catching anything. Robert was able to drive a lot easier at a high pace around that track than someone like David with a C-Hub HB or Elliott with a C-Hub Kyosho. Their cars were more edgy, more nervous off-center. They wanted to catch bumps more, unsettle the car or flip it over. They had to drive sort of, in some sections, carefully around the track, where I don't think Robert needed to. I don't think Robert really was careful. Of course, the track was difficult and you can't sort of hit all the bumps you want, but I don't think he was afraid of flipping over, you know? He drove smooth, as fast as possible, smoothly, not making mistakes, but he wasn't sort of extra careful. And that was because of the front end inclination. I'm trying to figure out the conclusion here. What I'm trying to say is both are good, but the higher the grip, the faster the track, the more bumpy the track, the better the inclined steering will be. On power, I would say that inclined steering is also better because it pushes slightly on power. On power with the C-Hub style, if it's bumpy, if it's high grip, it can still catch stuff and cause oversteer or the car to flip over. For the majority of drivers out there, I think that the inclined steering will be best most of the time. The only time I would say that the regular steering could be better for most drivers is on low traction. As you saw here, the problem with the inclination is that mid-corner, that slight increase in steering can catch you off guard and can cause oversteer. Likewise, on low grip, the fact that the C-Hub style front end is more aggressive off center, it doesn't matter as much because the traction is so low. So someone like me, if I'm now going to race my Mayako buggy and I have this option, what am I going to do? I think that what I'll end up doing actually is always start with the inclined front end, because it's just so much easier. And if I'm having some issues with not enough steering in tight corners, or the feeling of losing the rear end mid-corner, some sort of feeling of inconsistent non-linear steering, if these are my issues and I couldn't solve them with normal setup changes, then I would switch over to the C-Hub style zero inclined steering, because I know then I'll have all the steering I need in tight corners. I know that I won't have a problem with the rear end sliding out mid-corner, and I know that I can just be faster. That would only ever happen on a loose track, in my opinion. A loose, tight track, that's it. Medium grip to higher grip, inclination every time, all the way. So I hope you found this helpful. This is a bit of a teaser. The course videos will be more in depth. There'll be more close-up slow motion, more analysis of what's really going on. But this, I just wanted to release a YouTube video for you guys because it's been a while. Anyway, now I'm gonna get back to producing this course. So no more YouTube videos probably for a bit. You'll thank me later though. Believe me,